And despite no one else doing it, despite all the evidence, he had a bumper crop. And he was able to buy a farm. He didn't go broke, he bought the farm. That's a film based on a book called Faith Like Potatoes, quite aptly, a chap called Angus Buchan. But he showed faith. God spoke to him, he believed God spoke to him, and he did what seemed crazy. Isaac must have looked crazy in that land 4,000 years ago when he planted all his crops in the middle of the famine. But just like Angus Buchan, he did very well. Can you imagine it? You're the only person who's planting your crops. There's a massive lack of supply, demand is high, and you've got it all, and a bumper crop as well. You're going to get a good price, aren't you? A very, very good price for all your stuff. Their faith was rewarded. Now, what the chap said about there's a fine line between faith and foolishness has some credence. We shouldn't just say, oh, I think God's going to tell me to do this and that. We do need God to speak very clearly and often to find it to confirm other people, especially when making a very critical decision. I think it's wise to have good counsel as well. But if God speaks, then, and he's going to be with us, he's going to bless us, I think we can follow what he says. It's the wise thing to do. And indeed, Isaac's faith was clear because he's even mentioned in the great list of the men and women of faith mentioned in the book of Hebrews 11 verse 20. It says this: it was by faith that Isaac promised blessings for the future to his sons Jacob and Esau. He of course did that later, but the writer of Hebrews said it was by faith that Isaac planted his crops in the middle of a famine, and God rewarded his faith gloriously. A great man of faith who shows a good example. And we've looked at faith a lot this morning, so we're going to go on to the second one, which is Isaac, the man of peace. Isaac, the man of peace. See, so many times in that story there could have been war and conflict. Isaac could have not taken lightly those herdsmen coming in and bullying him and telling him it's not his well, it's theirs. You know, remember, by this time Isaac's got a big operation going on. He had loads of servants, big family, and a lot of people around, a lot of muscle, as it were. He could have easily sorted them out to get off and kick them off his land physically. But he chose the way of peace. In fact, he kept planting wells until no one bothered him. And then he said, this is the one where there's enough space for all of us. He chose to avoid conflict. Even when Abimelech came with his army commander, and I think Abimelech comes with an interesting motive. I think Abimelech realises that Isaac's really powerful. Probably not powerful enough to take him on yet, but he knows the writing's on the wall and he will be. So he thinks, let's go with the muscle in here and intimidate him before anything else happens. And Isaac sort of sees through it and says, well, you know, what do you want of this? You don't even like him. And then Abimelech sort of backs down a bit. I think he tells a few false truths about their previous stuff. And Isaac, again, he could have been a lot nasty. Instead, he's just pitiful. He has a feast with them, he makes them a meal, and then he puts out a piece of court. And he chooses at each point to live in peace. We are called to be peacemakers as Christ's disciples. One of the names that Jesus given way before he came was the Prince of Peace. And we're called to follow the Prince of Peace. We're called to follow his example. Both Isaac and Abraham, it seems they only went into conflict when there was no other choice. Abraham did go to war, but it was the same as his nephew. He wouldn't have got involved. It sounds like he was very reluctant to get involved because it was the last resort. In Romans chapter 12, verse 18, it says, do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. Do all that you can. So sometimes it's not possible, but we must do all we can to live in peace with everyone. And again, one of the great sayings of Jesus among the Beatitudes, a very famous saying, was, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. And we might, make that inclusive language, they will be called children of God. You know, we want to be peacemakers, I believe we are. I know that when Christ returns, there will be strife and conflict. And until that time, we are called to be agents of his peace. In Proverbs 15, verse 18, it says this: a hot-tempered person starts fights, a cool-tempered person stops them. In verse 1, a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. what sort of people are we? Are we people of peace or people of conflict? Because remember, when God came in Christ to live among us and to die for us, he came to make peace between us and himself. He came to make peace between us and other people, and he came to make peace within ourselves as well. Sometimes we're in conflict with ourselves, aren't we? He came to bring peace there as well. Are we, like Isaac, are we men and women of peace and children of peace? Do we look to stop fights rather than start? Do we look to avoid conflict and negotiate? I say occasionally there's no option, but as far as it depends on us, are we willing to get peace? Thirdly, Isaac, the man of connections. Isaac was blessed, as it said in that little reading I gave at the beginning, because he was connected to someone, his father Abraham. Abraham is the great man of faith, the man who left his whole country and went to live in tents in a land that was nothing to him, because he believed the voice of God. And God counted Abraham's faith as righteousness. God promised to bless Abraham, and so Isaac was the first really recipient of that blessing as his sort of chosen son. But Isaac didn't just inherit that promise from his father, he also inherited some of his father's characteristics. As I said earlier, Abraham was also a peacemaker. Abraham was a man of great faith, and we see that Isaac was a man of great faith, but they were also flawed. At times they showed a propensity to make silly decisions, to almost act like cowards. The bit of chapter 26 of Genesis I didn't read, and Ignite didn't read, talks about Isaac passing his beautiful wife off as his sister because he thinks, oh, I've gone into an enemy city, they might like my wife and then they might kill me. Sort of a love battle, as it were. So I'll just avoid that. Why would you do that if you believe God is with you? Abraham had done the same thing. That's actually in different places. And you wonder why Isaac did it. And he was very fortunate that God was merciful. God really was merciful. He kept the purity of his wife, and he kept both his wife, Rebecca, and himself as well. He protected them through that. And the Bible is very honest about the flaws of its heroes. Isaac and Abraham, make no mistake, they're heroes of faith. But yet the Bible is very, very clear that they weren't perfect. They did make mistakes at times. They did fail at times. And that should give us confidence and comfort, shouldn't it? You know, we want to be following Jesus, but we know that at times we do make mistakes. But God is with us. He does ask that we say sorry to him and that we turn away from them. But he is with us. And we can take comfort from these flawed characters. The only non-flawed character is one we'll come to in a moment. So Abraham inherited some good things from his parents and some bad things from his parents. Probably the same as all of us. We might think, oh, I'm acting like my dad today. I'm acting like my mum today. Sometimes that might make us feel happy. Sometimes that might make us feel frustrated or sad. Depends on the example. And there's always a mixture, I think, in most relationships. But he was connected with Abraham, and so he was blessed by being his son. Later on, Solomon would be wonderfully blessed by being the son of the great King David. David had many faults, believe me. But at the end of the day, God saw him as a man after his own heart, so he blessed him and his children and his descendants. And Solomon was a great recipient of that. But even more than Solomon and Isaac, if you and me have accepted Jesus as Lord, the one unflawed character in the Bible, the one perfect man, if we've accepted him, and we've come under his protection and his forgiveness and his restoration, then we, even more than Isaac and Solomon, are greatly blessed. We are blessed to be co-heirs with him of a glorious inheritance. Isaac inherited something on this earth. We inherit, if we've accepted Jesus as our Lord and Savior, to willingly put our lives in his hands and have agreed to be adopted into his heavenly family. We've benefited by knowing his peace and his presence, his provision in this life. But even more, we've benefited from having a heavenly inheritance which is eternal, not failed or spoiled. And we've got that to come, that wonderful, glorious inheritance. We can know that if we've accepted Jesus as our Lord and Saviour. So Isaac was connected to Abraham, but the big question is, are you and I connected to Christ? Because we need to. If we're not, I suggest you make it right. Because he does give us all the blessings that we need, both now and forevermore. So let's be like Isaac. Let's be men, women, children of faith. let's be men, women and children of peace. And let's be men, women and children who are connected to our loving Saviour, Jesus Christ. We're going to sing.